Hello, all you accidentally incepted quantum leapers out there, and welcome to Undeclared Bajor.
I guess it's a little quantum leapy.
My name is Fletcher, about to say hello is Data.
Yo.
Today we're going to recap and discuss Star Trek DS9, Season 5, Episode 8, Things Past. Alternate title, That 7 Years Ago Show.
Oh, no, I like that. That's good. Kurtwood Smith. No, I get it.
Good. I'm hip. I get jokes. Just in case this is your first time watching Star Trek DS9, we will attempt to only discuss spoilers up through this episode, but proceed at your own risk. Things Past originally aired November 18th, 1996. It was written by Michael Taylor and directed by LeVar Burton.
We've seen Michael Taylor once before.
Oh, okay.
He did The Visitor.
Oh, interesting.
And
for some reason, I thought we'd seen him more than that, but
no, apparently he did 20 episodes of Voyager, and at least one with Brian. No, 2 or 3 with Brian Fuller.
Oh,
and he'll do 4 episodes total of DS9: The Visitor, this one, Resurrection, which I don't remember offhand, and In the Pale Moonlight.
Oh. I wonder what that episode's about. The Joker?
Probably.
Sir Arklofton is not in this episode.
Neither is Colin Meaney, actually.
Oh, yeah. Sir Arklofton. Jake Sisko's not in this episode even when his dad is in a coma.
I read something or saw something the other day where Sir Arklofton is like the only Star Trek character, or actor rather, who's like in main credits for their series who is not in more episodes than they are in, or something like that.
Wow. I believe it.
I mean, I guess that doesn't count people who like join partway through a series, because obviously if someone's around for one season, then that wouldn't apply. But
well, even people who are like not in every season.
Yeah.
I feel like, like Wesley Crusher, I think is for seasons where he's credited.
Yeah, for seasons where he's credited, yeah.
He's still like in the majority of the seasons. Or in the of the episodes. So, Sisko, Dax, and Garrick take a runabout trip back from Bajor, where they were apparently attending some kind of academic conference about the Cardassian occupation. Garrick is upset that his pro-occupation opinions were not well received.
It does seem weird to be like, we're going to have this like conference where we take an objective look at the effects of the occupation, like 4 years after it ended or whatever. I'm like, this is still a bit fresh for you guys to be like. Garrick, in a way, has a point that it's like, well, if you say you're taking an objective look, then shouldn't you be willing to hear other sides? Although Sisko and Dax definitely make it sound like, no, they were totally nice to you about it and like listened to you.
It's like, maybe if everybody disagrees with the things you're saying, it's because you're wrong.
Could be.
Sometimes.
Do you remember the last time we saw Garrick?
We saw him. I felt like we saw him pretty recently.
It was a season. It is a season 4 episode called Broken Link, and at the end of the episode, he is sentenced to 6 months in prison for assaulting Worf and sabotaging the ship.
Ah, so I guess he's like fresh out of prison or something.
Yeah, probably.
I could have sworn we saw him this season.
I don't think so.
Oh.
And well, not according to Memory Alpha.
I believe the Memory Alpha nerds. It's okay. Anyway, Dax points out that Odo was very well received, despite his role in the occupation.
See that? Okay, it's kind of at the heart of the episode.
Uh-huh.
Odo is like, famously appreciated by both sides during the occupation, and this is like, oh, but he wasn't so great after all, is maybe the point of the episode. I don't know.
Maybe.
But we've discussed before that it's just like, I mean, he was basically a collaborator.
Right.
Like, why would anyone think, like, he was... They talk here. They were like, yes, your only master was justice. But this very episode shows us that as part of this justice, he arranges for the execution of men whose only crime was like fighting back against their oppressors. So
they didn't even do that.
Well, they didn't. But even if everything had been above board his entire time, like, this should not be cool from the Bajorans' perspective, I feel like. I don't get why it's like, oh man, Odo's so great.
But then, like, I mean, we'll talk about this, but then on the other hand, what's he supposed to do? Just, like, let them escape?
Yeah.
And then he's no good to anybody after that. So
that's true.
Anyway, we pan over and see that Odo has been sitting on the runabout the whole time. He's clearly uncomfortable with the admirable light that history seems to be shining on him, squirming in his seat when he hears praise, for these reasons that we're discussing. Back on DS9, Worf supervises the return of the runabout from Ops, but there's a problem. Everybody on board is in a coma or something. Dr. Bashir doesn't know what to make of it. Did they meet a guy with lightning hands or something?
Probably.
He's like, did you see lightning bolt burns on their heads?
Were you attacked by a Lethian? Is that what he was called?
Lethian?
Did they mind probe you or whatever they do?
As Bashir scans the unconscious bodies of Sisko, Dax, Odo, and Garrick, they wake up to find themselves somewhere else. And somewhere else.
Well, kind of somewhere else.
Yeah, true. They are on the promenade of Terok Nor during the occupation. A Bajoran man comes by and chews them out for doing chemicals.
Yeah, you gotta be better than this, guys. Come on.
Stop it with the chemicals. What the hell is going on here? They wonder.
So, the genesis of this show, of this episode, is Robert Hewitt Wolf is like, we want to do, like, Necessary Evil from season 2, which, has the flashbacks of Odo and Kira on Terok Nor.
Sure.
Was really popular, so they want to do something else like that. But they don't want to do, like, another memories/flashback thing. So they're like, well, what else can we do that would be the same thing without being the same thing? And they were like, maybe time travel? But we don't really want to do time travel again either. And so then Michael Taylor comes up with the idea of using the subconscious of a character as a gateway into the past. However, in his original pitch, he had Dax, Sisko, Garrick, and Odo waking up from a dream to find they were still in a dream and are actually in one another's dreams.
What?
With the denouement of the episode revealing that Odo is actually having the master dream.
That sounds delightfully complicated.
It does, right?
So it's like Dax is in Garrick's dream, and Garrick is in Sisko's dream, but the master dreamer is Odo. Yeah,
and also somehow everything they've experienced was from his past. So it's like, I guess they think they're having their own individual dreams, but these dreams are actually like things that happened in Odo's past that they don't realize. I don't know. I don't know, but yeah, it sounds like a very, very much more complex story.
Interesting.
I kind of want to see that with all the random dreams, and they wake up from the dream and they're in somebody else's dream.
Yeah, that sounds kind of bananas in a fun way.
Yeah.
In the infirmary, the four are laid out on cots with thingy-doos over their heads. Sisko's cot is too short and his feet hang over the edge.
I did not notice that.
It's just barely, but... Worf comes in and reports that the runabout passed through a plasma storm. Computer, says Bashir. Do plasma storms cause comas? Not that I know of, says the computer.
Apparently, Worf refers to Runabout Pad 1 here in the beginning of this episode, but in every other episode, the Runabout pads are designated by letter and not number, so...
Maybe there's just a separate Runabout pad that's Runabout Pad 1.
Yeah, that's the good one. They don't let you use that one very often.
Right. Well, Bashir's like, okay, well, I'm out. I have some reading to do. And Worf is like, about comas, right? But we never find out the answer to that, because in the end, the problem gets solved without Bashir doing anything.
Bashir's going to read some stuff that the computer hasn't read, I guess, that maybe does say that those shields can cause comas. I don't know. I'm going to go catch up on my Harry Potter. See ya. Hey, got to do what you got to do.
Back in the past, Sisko and friends try to figure out what's going on. They realize that they're wearing different clothes, and that everyone else seems to see them as Bajoran, which raises the question, how come they don't see each other wearing Bajoran earrings? Which is my nitpick of the week.
That's a good nitpick of the week. I hadn't considered that.
Dax hypothesizes that this might be some kind of quantum leap situation. We may just be destined to start leaping from life to life, striving to put right what once went wrong, and hoping that each time that our next leap will be the leap home.
I don't think that that's what she says.
That's the gist I got from it.
Although, is there any guarantee that if he does leap home, he'll stay there and not just continue leaping after that?
You know, I don't remember. Like, I think he can step back in the machine thing, maybe, and that'll stop it. He's a physicist. He knows what he's talking about.
Okay. I just feel like it would suck to spend the rest of your life terrified that at any moment you were going to leap again because like you finally fixed whatever it was that you're back in your own body to fix.
That would have been a good ending to the show. It's like, finally I'm home. The end. Well, no, okay, so when you leap somewhere, you're supposed to fix something that went wrong, right? So right. If he ever leaps back home, he just needs to make sure not to ever fix anything.
Yeah, just make sure everything is wrong. Every decision you make needs to be the wrong one.
Just go around wrecking shit up all over the place. Then he'll get to stay in his own time indefinitely.
It'd be like the end of Inception, where it's like, is this real? Is it not? Who knows?
Yeah, so Garrick asks why they can see their different clothes, but still see each other's regular faces. And at that point, Dax is like, dude, I don't know.
Because they are paying us actors to do this.
Right. Luckily, Garrick has security codes that can be used to prove that he's Cardassian. But Odo, who has been very agitated this whole time, points out that it's a terrible idea to call attention to themselves in any way to the Cardassian authorities.
I do really like when they're going to be executed and Garrick is sitting in the cell practicing like what he's going to say to try to convince them that he's Cardassian.
Right, see, he's the only one thinking stuff through this whole episode.
Yep.
Like, being proactive. But yeah, while they try to figure out a plan, Dax is like, oh crap, look, it's Gul Dukat. So they go a few feet away where Gul Dukat can't see them. Then Odo sees a ghost or something for a minute. He's clearly not enjoying this at all.
Yeah, I feel like the episode really just glides right by the weird, like, blood-soaked ghost that pops up. And it's like, man, I feel like that's got to be relevant, but...
It's like, are ghosts a normal thing on Terok Nor? I don't know. So by the fact that Dukat was talking to Odo's predecessor, Red Foreman, they deduce it must be at least 9 years ago. Because I guess that episode... we were just talking about it.
Necessary Evil?
That's the one where we saw Odo get his job, right?
Yes.
So, I guess that was 9 years ago now.
Or slightly less than, I don't know.
Sure,
yeah, about 9 years ago.
Then, some Cardassians come and grab Dax. Garrick tries to bribe them to let her go, but Dukat is watching, so one of them just punches Garrick.
Also, apparently Dukat has selected her, so... I don't know that you could accept that bribe. Like, what are you going to come back to Dukat and say? Like, yeah, I couldn't find her, man. I don't know.
Like, who? I saw you arrest her. What are you talking about? So, yeah, they punch Garrick up in the infirmary. This makes Garrick's nose bleed, which leads Bashir to conclude that Matrix rules apply. The body cannot live without the mind.
Oh, man, you know what is weird? I just went back to look at Necessary Evil to see if it said anything about how long ago it was. Apparently, it's a 5-year-old murder investigation at the time of Necessary Evil.
Okay.
And that was season 2, and this is season 5, so that'd be 3 more years. It should be about 8 years.
Okay, so maybe there was like a big gap in where this job was left open.
But interestingly, Sirach Lofton and Colomini also do not appear in that episode.
Oh my goodness.
So they're just not allowed to be in this sort of episode.
Their contracts say that they cannot be in past episodes.
Exactly.
We only look forward to the future. So, anyway, Bashir has no clue what's going on, and we don't see him for pretty much the rest of the episode.
Because he's useless.
Garrick pickpockets a pad from one of the Cardassians and hopes to use it to get some answers. Odo finds it very suspicious that a simple tailor has high-level security codes.
Have we not gotten past this already?
And then Garrick is like, are you serious? Is this a leftover script from season 2? I know I was in the Obsidian Order. You were with me that time we tracked down Anabrantane, and you were standing right there when I repledged my allegiance to him.
That's true. Yeah.
So...
And then I tortured you for a while.
Oh, yeah. It's like funny that a simple tailor is a master of torture and interrogation.
I wish they'd had that discussion. It's like, don't you remember the time that I tortured you? Good times.
Just anytime Garrick does something just blatantly Obsidian Order related, Odo is like, funny that a simple tailor said, I am Garrick of the Obsidian Order. Anyways, Garrick is able to scan everyone and figure out their identities, but Odo already knows who they are. But before Odo can explain, Quark comes by to give them some jobs at the bar.
Just, totally out of nowhere, like, hey, you get some jobs.
Can a man walk down the street in this country without being offered a job?
We never find out the true identity of the woman who Dax has become.
I don't know if she has a true identity or if she's just a symbol of many Bajoran women that Odo turned a blind eye to being sex trafficked to Dukat.
Could be. It does seem like the whole side story with her and Dukat isn't super relevant to the rest of the episode.
It's apparently happening in just a parallel, separate part of Odo's subconscious or something.
Right, yeah. And also Odo would have no way of knowing what happened there. So.
Right.
I mean, you could probably make a guess based on knowing Dukat. But...
His just imagination is generating this scenario to keep Dax busy or something. Or maybe one time he shapeshifted into a woman just to see what would happen. And he was just like, oh, geez, this is gross. But Quark is kind of a dick, and they ponder what would happen if they just kill Quark. This is the first and only time the possibility of using this opportunity to change history is mentioned. But they probably don't want another visit from Dulmer and Luxley.
Nope.
Which, why don't Dulmer and Luxley have their own spin-off show?
Just like visiting a new captain every week and hearing about another weird temporal adventure.
Meanwhile, in a different part of Odo's subconscious, Dax plays out her own little story with Dukat where he creepily creeps on her.
Man, he creeps so hard, and he's just like, it's maybe hard for you to believe, but I'm a lonely man, and...
Funny that I chose a simple Bajoran girl to be my friend. But Dax, like in all previous time travel episodes, just rolls with it.
Yeah, that is something about Dax, is that guys try to pick her up, and she's just like, all right, let's see where this goes.
Her rolling with it and adapting skills in time travel situations are top notch.
They really are, yeah. So it's this. While some fans felt that this episode was another stage in the process of making Dukat something more than a villain, thus building upon episodes such as, and then a big long list of episodes featuring Dukat, Ronald Moore argues that this was not the intention at all. He wants to be loved. He's the kind of dictator who thinks it's not enough that I put my foot on the throat of the people I'm oppressing. I want them to love me for it. Dukat believes he is the hero of his own story.
So wait, people think that he comes off as not a villain? Is that...
Yeah, I guess they're like, oh man, did you hear what he said about being lonely and just wanting a friend? He's not so bad after all.
Uh-huh. So yeah, Sisko, Odo, and Garrick are not enjoying bussing tables at Quark's. Garrick expresses the not very PC opinion that Bajorans are better at this because servile work is in their nature.
I mean, maybe this is the kind of thing that got you, kicked out of that conference or whatever.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time taking his side after listening to some of his opinions here. Odo sees more ghosts and has a mini freak out. And then Sisko's like, oh yeah, that reminds me. How did you know who we're supposed to be? I got too distracted with cleaning up the bar to ask you. And then Odo drops some bad news. There are 3 people who were falsely accused of trying to assassinate Dukat. and got executed for it.
Yeah, he read it in the files.
Right. He just knows the story from reading it in the files.
Yeah.
Well, that's not good, says Sisko. Then they watch as Red Foreman comes in and interrogates Quark about some smuggled crystals or something. Wait, that's weird, says Garrick. That crystal smuggler guy was actually a Romulan spy who didn't start operating in this sector until 7 years ago. But by then, Red Foreman was gone and Odo was in charge of security.
And Odo's just like, yeah, weird. I don't know, man.
Also, aside from noticing that contradiction, I looked at the calendar, and it is indeed 7 years ago. Yeah, great. Who gives a shit, says Sisko. We have to get off the station before we get executed.
I mean, that is a priority. I have to agree.
True. Hard to argue. Let's go turn that vase upside down so the Resistance will come talk to us. Which they do.
Like, really fast.
Then they sit down for some soup. After Odo has a quick vision of some blood on his hands, and while Dukat and Dax just stroll around, the Resistance guy comes to talk to them, and he does not like soup.
Nope, not a fan.
He just objects to the entire food form of soup.
Also, the blood on the hands is a little bit heavy-handed with the metaphor, but...
But before they can make their pitch, a bomb goes off, and Dukat and Dax are knocked out. Sisko rushes to Dax's aid, but then he and the others are arrested.
Actually, Odo's like, no, we shouldn't do this. This is a bad idea. We need to go. And Sisko's like, shut up, whatever. I know better than you. Terry Farrell says that this was memorable for the makeup that was applied to represent Dax's injuries after this explosion. But you can't clearly see them in the final cut. So
yeah, she looks totally fine in the next scene. So
it says, Dax got hurt in that one, so there wasn't much for me to do. The thing was such a drag that my makeup artist, Karen Iverson, did all these really awesome scrapes and burns on me because of the explosion. But because of the way they had to put me into the show, you never saw any of it. Dax always looked so clean and neat, and it was fun to be messy and dirty with blood all over me for a change. But they ended up shooting it over the back of my head.
So in jail, Red Foreman comes in and lays out his case for their guilt. Odo tries arguing with him with all kinds of things he could look at that will prove their innocence, but it's no use. Then Odo begs for a private audience with Red, but Red just leaves.
Odo was like, do the slightest amount of actual detective
right.
work.
Maybe
and
like
talk
like, nah. to the witnesses or like investigate past incidents or do anything. He's like, nah.
I'm too busy for work.
Right. Back in Dukat's office, Dax is still doing her best rolling with it while Dukat blah blah blahs about typical Dukat stuff.
Yeah, how many times do you think she has to sleep with Dukat in Odo's subconscious here?
It was probably a lot. I don't know. But as soon as he turns his back, Dax bonks him and he falls down unconscious and she starts using his computer. Meanwhile, Sisko in jail is like, you know what? Now that we're in jail, I'd like to revisit the issue of why Red Foreman is in charge of security and not Odo. But this thought is interrupted when Dax burns a hole in the wall to break them out. During their daring escape, they get in a phaser fight with some Cardassians, including Red Foreman. They take out all the guards and Red Foreman changelings out of there.
Yeah, that's the only verb that can apply.
Yeah. Garrick is like, what? But Sisko's like, no, shut up. I'm back to not caring about that.
Yeah, too busy again.
Finally, they make it to a shuttle. They're saved. No, they're not. They're all back in jail. And they're scheduled to be executed in 2 hours.
And this is, I guess, the moment where it's supposed to be like, oh, they haven't gone back in time. Something weird is going on here.
Or the moment when Red Foreman turns out to be a changeling. Sisko says, okay, yeah, let's talk about the Red Foreman being a changeling thing. None of this makes any sense. And then Sisko and Garrick tag team interrogate Odo, shooting rapid-fire questions without letting Odo get in a word edgewise. Before Odo has a chance to speak, Red Foreman comes in to take Odo away. Odo tries laying out more evidence, but Red is like, who cares? The Bajorans deserve whatever they get for resisting the occupation. Well, says Odo, what if I told you I'm from the future? Oh, I know, says Red. Dumbass.
calls him Odo, and it's like, oh my god, what?
We do the Vertigo, like, zoom and whatever shot.
Pull and zoom, yeah.
Then suddenly they're on the promenade. Sisko, Garrick, and Dax are lined up about to be executed. Apparently the role that Odo was playing in this dream is now being played by Dax. So maybe Odo is now the female Bajoran.
Yeah, why not?
Then the vantage point shifts again. The four of them watch as 3 Bajoran men get executed, while Odo coldly watches over. Then the scene vanishes, and Odo admits to the other 3, "Yep, that's what happened. I goofed on that one." Then they all wake up, for no apparent reason. Bashir explains to Odo that the plasma storm activated the linking molecules that are still in his brain, apparently. And he accidentally incepted the other 3 into his memories of the execution, which he had been thinking about.
So, just hand-wavy technobabble, the episode happened.
Right. Then Kira comes in and starts acting all high and mighty, finally able to get the moral high ground on Odo after that time she murdered that guy and lied to him about it all those years. She sort of forgives him on the grounds that the occupation was a terrible time that made people do bad things. But she wants to be sure that Odo never executed any other innocent people on his watch. But, like Anthony Weiner being asked if there are no more dick pics that are going to surface, he can't make that promise. The end.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the whole thing, is like, my whole thing actually here is, other than what I've already mentioned, is like, any job you do, you're going to make mistakes at some point. And you're not always going to know that they were mistakes. And it's not always going to even be because of some sort of negligence on your part. Like, mistakes are going to get made. And when you are doing the job that Odo is doing, sometimes that means that people are going to go to jail, or probably more often than not in the occupation are going to die, even when they shouldn't.
Yeah.
And so it seems bizarre to me that they're like, Odo was actually a horrible person because he made a mistake this one time.
Right.
And I'm like, really? That's the deep dark secret? I can understand why he would be upset about it, because if you inadvertently caused the deaths of 3 people who didn't deserve it, then you should feel really bad about that.
Right.
But I don't see how everyone else can be like, oh my god, you're a monster.
Yeah, it's true. The fact that it was during the occupation kind of isn't super important to this story.
No, it could have been, well, other than the fact that the Bajorans probably don't execute a bunch of people like the Cardassians did. It could have been like any time.
Yeah, that's true. But in fact, it almost makes it less bad that it was during the occupation.
Well, because you know that lots of innocent people got killed by the Cardassians for whatever reason during the occupation. So
right.
the fact that Odo tried it all to make sure it was the correct people versus just randomly choosing and executing a bunch of people still makes him slightly better than average.
Yeah.
But yes, as you pointed out, this says that there's an intentional like mirroring here of the final scene of these 2 episodes, where Kira and Odo are standing on opposite sides of Odo's desk as one is trying to come to terms with the actions of the other.
You'd think Kira would be a little bit more gracious about it.
Right? Yeah, she seems really eager to just like jump on him and take her turn.
And haven't we like heard all kinds of stuff? Like, didn't she like bomb an administrative building one time that had all kinds of civilians in it?
She didn't lie to Odo about that, though, so it's okay.
She was like, "Oh yeah, I did that." Like, I'm all for it.
I get the impression that LeVar Burton is just the guy who nicknames stuff, because first we had Terry Farrell as Action Barbie, and then apparently he, during production, called this episode Nightmare on Odo Street.
Nice. That would have been great if there was like a Freddy Krueger villain in the dream.
It would have been. I mean, they kind of did that with the Lethian or whatever in the Bashir episode.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a cut line from the script that didn't make it into the film, or into the movie, the filming, sorry.
Oh, sure.
that Bajorans on Terok Nor were known to burn Malaba drums in order to keep warm. And months later, Dukat claimed that he extended environmental controls into the Bajoran sector to improve their quality of life. So I guess that's when he's bragging about like all the stuff that he does for them.
So he turned on the heaters in the Bajoran section.
It's like, hey, I took the like super teeny tiny step of flipping a switch so that like the heat would extend into that part of the station also.
It was while I was like filming my big elaborate anti-insurrection like interactive video program.
Honestly, given what we see in the episode, the Bajoran sector does not seem separated from the rest of the station enough that it would be easy to not heat that while heating the rest. So it seems weird to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, how come my bathroom doesn't get warm when the entire rest of the house is?
Well, because there's not vents in there.
There is a vent in there. I checked.
Yeah.
I don't know if like heater comes through it or not. Anyway, that's a separate issue.
Well, apparently there's a reason that bathrooms aren't generally connected to like the central air and heat for the rest of the house, because then you get like the moisture, instead of sending the moisture outside, like bathrooms have the one vent that like blows the moisture out, it would like wrap the moisture around through the heating system and into the rest of the house, so you get like mold and stuff everywhere.
Okay. Like, so maybe it's like a fake vent. I don't know. It's unpleasant on days like today.
No, yeah, you're not wrong. Let's see, Terry Farrell's quoted again in here saying, "I like Things Past because we always talked a lot about the occupation, and in that one we got to experience what the writers were thinking about it. They'd done something like it once or twice before, but Dax wasn't very involved in those."
Right. So yeah, I know this is nothing new, but I got to be in this one.
Yeah. I like it when I'm in stuff.
Right.
Let's see, LeVar Burton says that he liked this one because he had a lot of fun with the opportunity to experience a different visual style for Deep Space Nine. We got to do a lot darker, really gritty. And I know it was a lot of fun for Jonathan West, the DP.
LeVar Burton always does weird stuff that makes me laugh when he's directing. Like, when we play out this whole scene and it just seems to be Sisko, Garrick, and Dax, and then, like, eventually we pan over and Odo's been sitting there the whole time, just being quiet.
Yeah, it was... It's like Odo doesn't get involved in these conversations. Although in the last episode, he was just sitting down with Sisko to do some gossiping. So,
yeah, I guess he's not feeling too chatty.
No, not after apparently going to a conference where he was like the big popular hit of the like. You were the best thing about the occupation, Odo. And he's like, ugh, this is awkward. There was that one time that I did a bad job. In the many times that I had Bajorans executed for no crime other than standing up to their aggressors, there was one time that I messed it up.
Yeah, it's like all those times I presided over executions of people who committed really minor offenses against the Cardassians. At least those were valid according to Cardassian law.
Yeah, that's the important thing, is the letter of the law.
Yep. And I guess that's the lesson that Odo tried to teach himself in this episode, is there's more than the rule of law or something. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, Red Foreman has the speech that he makes at him, but at the time it's like, wait, what's happening here? Because you're still confused about like what is supposed to be going on. And so I don't know that it hits that hard.
Yeah.
Renee Auberjonois says, "I like the script. Odo's a character who we've come to believe always tells the truth. In fact, in the pilot, he says to Dukat, 'There's one thing you know about me. I never lie.' We've tried to be consistent with that, but that doesn't mean he doesn't lie to himself. He's this wonderfully contradictory character in that he's made of liquid, but he's very rigid."
Wow.
Yeah, deep.
Deep.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I'm positive Odo has told lies.
Oh. Yeah, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but like to Quark especially, right? It seems like that he probably lies to catch him at stuff all the time.
And I think just the very act of shapeshifting is kind of a lie, or a form of lying. I mean, does like going undercover count as lying?
Yeah, right. That's a fair question. So the last one I have, the impetus to create a dark past for Odo came from the writer's desire to sully his character to a degree. As Ronald D. Moore explains, one of the things that always drove the writing staff nuts was the idea that Odo had been a policeman during the Cardassian occupation, but had never gotten his hands dirty, that he'd been above it all, and that everybody trusted him. We never bought that. It seemed to me that if I were Bajoran, I wouldn't trust a cop who's still on duty from the occupation.
Uh-huh.
Somewhere along the line, something bad went down on Odo's watch, and Things Past was the show to say it.
Yeah, I mean, this is again, I think we've spoken about this many times. Like, Odo just somehow got a free pass.
Yep.
For his role in the occupation.
Well, not only that, we find out in this episode that people laud him for it.
Yeah, this myth of Odo as the good Cardassian collaborator has somehow spread around. Maybe because he's a changeling, he gets special consideration or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he is outside of the racial divide between the Cardassians and the Bajorans, which I started to say political, but really the two are kind of the same in the Star Trek universe. Unless you're a member of the Federation, like, your race is also like your politics,
right?
Which, when you think about it, is really saying something that they're probably not intending to say. But whatever, we'll move past it.
All right, so I guess we can dive into reviews.
Okie doke. What do you think?
Well, okay. Here's what I have written. I've got some good and some bad written down.
Mm-hmm.
So good is I like addressing that Odo was basically a collaborator.
Mm-hmm.
I like the lesson about how a horrible situation can make people do unthinkable things that are hard to justify. And I like the scene where Odo is basically pleading with himself to do a better job investigating. And I like the way that the episode kind of cruelly shows that you can't change what's already happened, no matter how badly you want to.
Mm.
And I like Garrick.
Oh, yeah.
The bad is, I'm not sure that this plot device was the best way to tell this story. In the end, something about it was just not very satisfying. Like, we all just had this dream and then woke up. And apparently there were no real stakes or anything. I was thinking, like, maybe it would have been cool to, like, actually, like, have it take place during the conference. And then maybe Odo gets more and more guilty about the praise he gets. And while, like, simultaneously showing flashbacks. Or I was thinking maybe, like, there's a movie about him and his heroism during the occupation or something.
Ooh.
And as we watch the movie, like, we juxtapose it with Odo's memories of what really happened. Or, like, maybe he's, like, advising on the set of a movie or a holo recreation or whatever as an advisor. And, like, the director is all enthusiastic and then he's kind of going along with it at first, but, like, he's, getting more and more guilty or something. I don't know. I think it's interesting. Their original concept for this episode, I really would have liked to see that.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been a little too crazy, but anyway, the way it is, it just feels like Odo doesn't really do very much. And he just kind of, like, has a bad dream, and then he feels bad about it with no real lesson or anything for him. Or he's just kind of sitting there, like, miserable.
Yeah, because he's kind of already made the change that he would, like, the don't half-ass it, investigate stuff. Like, he already does that.
Mm-hmm.
So what change exactly are we trying to elicit?
Right. Yeah, he's exactly, like, he's already learned everything he has to learn from this incident. All that's left is just his guilt or whatever. So, I think I still like it more than I dislike it, but I think it falls pretty squarely in the lieutenant commander
Okay.
range.
Okay.
So, What do you think?
So, this is one of those episodes that I have a potentially irrational, strong dislike for. Like, I really don't like it. And I've talked about some of the stuff, and I like some of the things that you said about, like, alternate ways you could tell this story. Like, I would actually have liked to see them reverse the public opinion and have Odo going into the conference, maybe, you know, like, he feels generally good about doing the best that he could do during the occupation, and the people he knows are, like, on his side, like, no, you did what you had to do, but then be confronted with people for the role that he did play. And it doesn't even have, I mean, the story about, like, this one time he messed up, that's fine, although, as I pointed out, like, I don't think that that's something to really call him out on, as in contrast with the quote-unquote times he got it right.
Right.
Because those are not quite worse, but at least as bad and much more prevalent. So, like, people confronting him with, like, you killed or you arranged the execution of my father, and all he did was, like, try to free Bajor from the occupation. Like, he could be confronted with the reality of the effect that he had when he was doing the job right. And the fact that the way he looks at it is not the way these other people see it. And the effect that he had on their lives is not what, like, he might have wanted. There's other ways to tell this story. I feel like the Nightmare on Odo Street thing, I agree that I think it would have been more entertaining the way they originally wrote it, where it gets wacky fast and you're not sure what's going on. Because in this case, what happens is we're stuck in the past, quote unquote past, for a long time. And then towards the end, we start to figure out, oh, things are weird. It's like the last 5 minutes that, oh, this guy's a shapeshifter all of a sudden, and what's going on? And there's, like, obviously they do drop those hints that you referenced earlier on. There's a couple of hints here and there that things aren't lining up exactly how they should. But for the most part, this could have been, they just went back to the past until you get to that last few minutes. And they don't do anything in the past. It's all supposed to be this lesson for Odo that, as we said, like, doesn't amount to anything because it doesn't, it's not impetus for him to change in any way. It just, he already feels bad about it too. It's not even supposed to make him feel more bad. It's, I guess the only thing that really happens is word gets out as his friends start to spread the tale of what happened back then. And Kira gets to have her moment of being disappointed in him. It all just feels so pointless. And like they're softballing the story of the dark history of Odo's past in the occupation. Like, they're like, okay, yeah, he got his hands dirty, but it wasn't really that big a deal, honestly. When I'm just like, but it was a big deal. He did stuff that the Bajorans should consider monstrous in the actual execution of his duties. And he has a justification that you brought up. It's like, well, he was doing the best he could under the system that there was. And so the question then becomes, it's kind of like the trolley problem, where it's like, if you do nothing, people are going to die. If you flip the switch, maybe fewer people die, but you are directly responsible for those deaths. Is that better? Does that make you a good person or a bad person? Because, like, there's a deep philosophical question that you could be addressing here that they skirt aside by being like, oh no, the Bajorans love him for the stuff he did during the occupation. That honestly they shouldn't. But this one time he messed up, and so he's bad. So yeah, anyway, there's all of those problems that I do have with the episode. I don't think any of those are necessarily responsible for the fact that I just don't like it. It's pointless, and I don't particularly like time travel as a rule, although there are times when it's used well. Like, I love Star Trek First Contact. I think they use time travel excellently in that movie. Here, it's supposed to be time travel, and then it's not, and then reading that the producers are just like, we wanted to copy that thing that we did in the second season, but not do exactly like that, so just something kind of like that. Like, that makes so much sense to me. in getting the feeling from this episode that it's like, why are we doing this? What is the point of all of any of this? And so yeah, I don't like it. I don't like the episode. It's not like, oh my god, I hate it so much. So we're not talking like ensign, but I think I'm going to give it like a lieutenant junior grade.
Okay. Yeah, that would have been an interesting episode if it's like Odo shows up and it's the panel of like the victims of Odo or something.
Yeah, right?
And then maybe, they tell their stories and then he tells his story. And by the end, like, one person forgives him or something like that.
Yeah. And that's the thing. To really, really look at a complicated issue, it doesn't have to come out black and white at the end. Both sides can have their own perspectives that are valid from their side, but it still be like, nobody is right and wrong. It was a messed up time and people were doing the best that they could do.
Mm.
But the episode doesn't want to have it that way, really. I mean, even though that is kind of the wrap up at the end where Kira's like, I guess nobody made it through without getting their hands a little dirty. But it doesn't, I don't feel it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of realistic that you can regret something you did and then you just always regret it.
Yeah.
Like there's never any lesson to be learned from it. It just sucks. But something about it doesn't make for very satisfying storytelling, especially in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Let's see, I thought I had another segment idea, but I forgot.
Well, you brought up your nitpick of the week.
Yeah,
so.
Nitpick of the week, I think still stands after our whole discussion.
No, absolutely.
Why don't they have earrings on?
Avery Brooks is like, I'm not piercing my ear, guys. Although I'm pretty sure that they weren't using actual pierced earrings for the Bajorans, but
maybe just all of those 4 people, or 3 real and 1 potentially imaginary person, were non-religious Bajorans who don't wear earrings or something.
They weren't very spiritual.
Yeah.
Sure.
We could do a Meanwhile in the Mirror Universe. I don't know. I don't even know what that would look. Odo's dead in the Mirror Universe, so.
Yeah. So he's not sending anyone into a link up. I mean, also Cisco is dead, and
oh yeah,
and who else is here? So we got Dax. Dax isn't dead, I don't think, and Garrick. Garrick's not dead. He's a chained up slave. He's the gimp for Worf, but. So yeah, I don't think anything like this episode happens in the Mirror Universe, honestly.
Although I did enjoy seeing what a horrible person Quark was.
Sure.
To the Bajorans. But apparently he was smuggling them food, so maybe that makes up for it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if it... I don't feel like it's Quark being unusually horrible to the Bajorans. I feel like he's treating them more or less like he treats any of his employees.
That's a good point.
I mean, he's super condescending and sarcastic, which maybe he just doesn't... We don't see him do as often because nobody would tolerate it in the current time period. Right. But I totally believe that Quark would act like that to his employees when he could get away with it.
Yeah, probably the Cardassians don't find that kind of thing as off-putting.
Yeah,
so it's not as harmful to his business.
Right. Yeah, not directed at the Bajorans for sure, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I guess we can wrap it up there.
Title review?
Oh yeah, title review. What do you think of the title?
I think it fits with what you talked about, how, part of the lesson here is that, like, you can't change what happened, right?
True.
And so things past, it's like, yeah, it's stuff that's in the past that you can't actually change. I think that kind of fits. It's somewhat memorable in that, when things past comes up, it's one of these episodes that happens in the past.
True.
I don't know that I could pick it out versus like Necessary Evil, but it would narrow it down well enough. It's a little bit simple, and so it doesn't stick out much in that way, but I think it's okay.
Is that from the title of a book or something? Like Remembrance of Things Past, or?
I mean, that does sound...
a poem or something?
Let's see. In Search of Lost Time, first translated into English as Remembrance of Things Past.
Oh, is that like Proust or whatever?
It is a French... yes, by Proust.
Okay. Interesting. I don't know anything about that book,
Yeah, I'm about to read the or try to find a brief synopsis here. The synopsis is not brief. It recounts the experiences of the narrator, who was never definitively named, while he is growing up, learning about art, participating in society, and falling in love.
Okay. Isn't that like the only book Proust ever wrote or something like that?
I don't know. Well, here, let's look at Proust.
I'm just drawing on my like pub trivia collection of facts.
Begun in 1909 when Proust is 38 years old, À la recherche du temps perdu consists of 7 volumes totaling 3,200 pages and featuring more than 2,000 characters.
Wow.
Graham Greene called Proust the greatest novelist of the 20th century, just as Tolstoy was of the 19th.
Wow.
Proust died before he was able to complete his revision of the drafts and proofs of its final volume.
Huh.
The last 3 were published posthumously.
Interesting.
So maybe
that can be an exercise for the people in the comments. If you know what the deal with Proust is, put it in the comments.
Okay, so there was another novel published posthumously by his editors.
Oh, okay.
That he wrote first, and he later develops a lot of those themes in Search of Lost Time.
Is it one of those ones where they just like found it in his stuff and were like, ooh, we got to publish this?
Yeah, it seems like it.
That always turns out well. Okay. We'll go ahead and call it there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we thank you for joining us today. You can find all our past episodes wherever you're listening to this, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, whatever. If you want to leave us comments, you can do it on YouTube. If you want to give us like a review, you can do it on Apple Podcasts. Anyway, my name is Fletcher. About to say goodbye is Data.
See ya.
We look forward to seeing you for our next discussion, but just remember, don't stand between me and the Miraji crystals.